Today, we're diving into leading lines. I'll walk you through some sets I've created in the studio using Speedrail, pipes, V-flats, and only one light. Then we'll take it outside to shoot 12 different setups with natural light. Along the way, I'll share some grip tips, why I'm using this massive boom, and my process for shooting outdoors with only my favorite lens, the Fuji 55mm 1.7. Ultimately though, this video is about composition, with a few extra tips sprinkled in because as you know, there are levels to this. When working with leading lines, we have straight lines, curved lines, all of which guide your viewer's eye into the photograph and help focus their attention. For me, composition is intuitive, and leading lines are something I'm naturally drawn to. For this first setup, I used a mix of Schedule 40 Speedrail and lighter duty galvanized electrical conduit from a hardware store, which works perfectly for this diagonal that doesn't need to be load bearing. I'm attaching the Speedrail to the stands with cupoe couplers, tightening the wing nuts with a wrench for extra security. I also added a super clamp below to prevent any slipping when it's supporting our model. The coupler swivel, which allows me to hang the pipe diagonally. For the top piece of Speedrail, I'm using cupoe couplers with a junior adapter to securely connect it to the stand. It's also sometimes referred to as a Big Ben style clamp. These pipes create the leading lines for our minimalist fashion editorial set, and I'm using lighting and adding even more lines through shadow. I'm using a Profoto Pro head connected to a Profoto Pro 8, which you can find in Adorama's used department. I'll drop a link below if they're available at the store at the release of this video. They tend to move pretty fast. It's mounted on a cupoe mega boom, so I can easily position the light high up without the stand interfering with my positioning. To add contrast, I use cinefoil to prevent light from hitting the ceiling and creating an extra unwanted light source. Now for some lighting tips. The amount of seamless paper I have rolled out is intentional, as it lets me use the floor as a bounce to give a little bit more fill. So even if I have a shot where the model's head is tilted down, there's still enough light to create nice catch lights in the eyes. I play with negative fill to deepen shadows on the seamless, the chrome on the stand, and the model's face. Compared to the effect when I use only the white side of the V-flat, there's a huge difference. These are the little adjustments I make to give subtle differences. Ultimately, I want the lighting to feel like sunlight through a skylight, high but not directly overhead. So now let's look at some images and how I use leading lines. The first set focuses on straight and diagonal lines. I get a simple fashion image that can easily translate into a beauty shot. Here the lines frame our subject and the shadows add depth. For these shots, I'm using the leading lines from the pipe and shooting with the Fuji GF 1.7, drawing attention to the subject and framing her within the image. When I back up, I can capture full body portraits, and it gives me more of an industrial look as well, incorporating more of the set into the shot. I even asked the model to mimic the lines of the pipes with her limbs for some added symmetry. Now for the next set. I'm using converging lines to direct attention to the model. The lighting remains the same. I'm treating it like sunlight coming through a studio window. I always say that one well-placed light can do the heavy lifting, and you don't need to overlight a shot. For this setup, I use two 10-foot and one 8-foot V-flats to form converging lines. The black sides on the outside direct attention to the center. I also do some light retouching to clean up the seams and extend the backdrop for a 16:9 video frame. For this shot, I give the set more perspective by adjusting my shooting angle and photographing from above. The model's pose and shadows add even more lines, creating depth. I often ask models to create triangular poses to enhance this effect. Now, let's head outside for those of you who don't have access to a studio or any gear but your camera. I'll be shooting about 2 hours before sunset using the low sun to my advantage. This set includes around 11 locations, all shot in 52 minutes. Let me know in the comments below which of these natural light setups is your favorite. Shot 1. In the middle of the parking lot, I use the sun's reflections on the ground as leading lines. By positioning the model in direct sun, the background darkens, reducing distractions. I only have about 7 frames that I shoot here. Now shot 2. I moved to the van, using its reflections to light the model's face. The van's lines and shadows create leading lines that frame her. I only shot about 8 frames here. There weren't any shots that I was really too crazy about, but wanted to demonstrate the leading lines. Shot number 3. This one I shot near a loading dock. I positioned her so the cement wall leads your eyes to her. While sunlight peeks over a building, I expose for the highlights, knowing my GFX gives me room to recover shadow detail. I only shot 3 frames here because I pretty much knew that I had it. Shot number 4, in the loading dock. I use the descending diagonal line to draw the eye to her as she sits on the edge of the wall to better catch the escaping light that is now fully illuminating her face. I shot about 22 frames here. It actually took me a while to kind of figure out the frame that I liked. Now I have her in full shadow inside of the loading dock and wanted to experiment with pulling back for a much wider shot and shooting down into the loading dock. I only shot 3 frames here. It wasn't a shot I was too crazy about, but wanted to also demonstrate the leading lines. Now for shot number 6. I shot this over by a curb. I frame her in the sunlight and capture both seated and standing poses, playing with hand shadows and moving in for tighter shots since I'm not using a zoom. I shot about 24 frames here. On to shot number 7. On the shadow side of the building, I used the leading lines created by the white cement meeting the asphalt to direct the eye to our model. I shot about 22 frames here. Now on to shot number 8. This one's simple. I positioned her between 2 dumpsters. Using their lines to frame her, I did shots with her centered. I moved in to get tighter shots. I would even position myself behind the dumpster on the left to throw it out of focus to frame her, still using the leading lines on the dumpster to the right. I shot about 41 frames here. I really love the light and the fact that the 2 dumpsters really demonstrated leading lines very well. For shot number 9, I found a random garbage pile. No clear leading lines, but it's a fun shot I couldn't pass up. I shot about 13 frames here. Now on to shot number 10. On a concrete pad by a generator, I used a corner to create lines bringing the eye to her, with her face still facing the direction of the sun, which is no longer offering up direct harsh rays of light, but still has direction. By now, we have a good rhythm, so I got a range of poses and only needed 18 frames here. Shot number 11. Here I use the grass meeting the wall, and the path is leading lines framing her where everything seems to intersect. I shot this to more illustrate using leading lines and only shot 6 frames here. Now for my last shot, shot number 12, I wanted curved leading lines, so I positioned her against a bush. I started out shooting at the level of the bush because I thought it made for an interesting frame, but quickly realized it would be more flattering to have her chin up towards the light and eyes in the camera, so I shot down. This also gives me a way of cleaning up the background and a more pronounced curved leading line of the bush. So comment which were your top 3 setups. For me, it was the loading dock, the dumpster, and the concrete slab. In just 12 shots, and spending an average of about 4 minutes per location, I've used light and composition to create dynamic images. You don't need fancy gear, you just need what's up here. So challenge yourself. Go out for about an hour, try 12 setups. It's a photography workout that will teach you a ton about light and composition. So comment with your favorites, and remember, there are levels to this.